The House of Stuart began with James I, also James VI of Scotland. He had ruled since he was 1 year old when his mother, Mary Queen of Scots, had been deposed. James was 37 when he became the King of England in 1603, succeeding his dead aunt, Elizabeth I. James ruled over a time of economic prosperity but political turmoil in England. The cities were growing, such as London, and the businesses were prospering, such as the East India Company, which established more colonies in Virginia under the leadership of Sir Walter Raleigh. In 1607, the first permanent English settlement in the New World was discovered with Jamestown. Later, in 1620, Christian separatists called Pilgrims established Plymouth. In order to standardize religion and bring unity to the Church of England, James authorized the creation of an English Bible, the King James Bible, published in 1611. James dealt with political turmoil, including the Gunpowder Plot led by Guy Fawkes. During James's reign, the arts of Elizabethan English, such as Shakespeare and John Donne, flourished. James died in 1625 after 22 years on the throne. James I had died in 1625, but was succeeded by his son, Charles I. Charles wanted to be an absolute monarch. He believed that he had a right to rule because God had made him king. This divine right of kings theory was popular in Europe at this time, as was absolutism. However, in England, with a parliament that was part of an issue, Charles wasn't able to do this. Parliament eventually grew tired of the king demanding money and trying to cancel them whenever they met. So, under the leadership of Oliver Cromwell, they organized an army called the Roundheads and started the English Civil War against the king's followers, the Cavaliers. The war went back and forth for several years, but eventually the king was defeated, put on trial, condemned as treasonous against Parliament, and executed in 1649. His family fled, and England entered a period of interregnum for 11 years, in which Parliament, under the leadership of Oliver Cromwell, who had refashioned the army in the new model army, ran the country, even conquering Ireland. After Cromwell's death, the monarchy was restored in 1660. Charles I's son, Charles, had lived in exile ever since the Cavaliers and his father had lost the English Civil War. He had lived in the Netherlands and France, and from there had seen his father beheaded and Parliament take over under the interregnum, in which the Lord Protector, Oliver Cromwell, dominated English politics. When Cromwell died and his son proved to be incompetent, Parliament decided to bring back the monarchy in 1660. Charles II sought stability, peace, and reform, an end to the tensions following the English Civil War, and a stability between Catholics and Protestants that was extremely hard to achieve. However, he was faced with numerous challenges, including the Great London Fire of 1666, which forced him to move his government, and the plague, which killed 1/6 of his population in 1665. In the New World, he encouraged piracy, with Henry Morgan operating out of Jamaica. New World discoveries and expansion included the Carolinas, named after him, founded in 1665, while in 1664 they seized New Amsterdam from the Dutch and renamed it New York after Charles's brother, James, the Duke of York, who would succeed him in 1685 as James II. Charles II had had a tumultuous reign, but a successful one. At his death, his brother James, the Duke of York, became James II, since Charles had no heirs. James's biggest problem, according to Parliament, was that he was a practicing Catholic, and although he promised not to return England back to Catholicism, with the birth of a son continuing the Catholic line in 1688, Parliament invited Charles's daughter Mary and her husband William of Orange to overthrow James in what became known as the Glorious Revolution of 1688, where no blood was spilled and James was deposed peacefully. William became William III and Mary became Mary II, and James was sent into exile. James and his son would continue to hope to be restored to the monarchy and bring England back to Catholicism until the son's death in 1766. William and Mary had become monarchs because of Parliament, and it was Parliament who started to take more charge. With the English Bill of Rights in 1689, they created a constitutional monarchy which limited the power of the sovereign and increased the power of Parliament. William and Mary accepted these terms as it was the only way that Parliament would support their reign. Mary died in 1694, and William spent much of his reign in the Netherlands and died in 1702, being succeeded by Anne, Mary's sister. William III and Mary II had had successful reigns, and England had transformed into a constitutional monarchy. By the time of William's death in 1702, Anne, the sister of Mary, became the Queen of England. Anne was quiet and timid, and spent most of her adult life struggling with physical ailments. She was happy to delegate authority, and Parliament was happy to let her do this. With an emerging two-party system in England between the Tories and the Whigs, Anne chose to side with the conservative Tories, who supported her reign and her policies. Parliament's most greatest accomplishment during her reign, and what her reign is most known for, is the Act of Union. For a century, the monarch of England and Scotland had been the same person, but the countries had not been joined together until, with the Act of Union in 1707, Scotland and England were united into Great Britain. England assumed the debts of Scotland, and Anne became the first monarch of Great Britain. She had had a successful reign, but had delegated most of her authority. Despite having many children with her husband, George of Denmark, she died without an heir in 1714, ending the Stuart Dynasty.